And we'll begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance before we call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please, I'll call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
City Council members Brown, Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Wu,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting, May 20th of 2019.
Move to approve the minutes.
Okay, Sharice moves to approve.
I'll second.
Seconded by Jared. Are there any corrections to the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? I do have one subtraction from the agenda. Under new business number 5, we've had a request to pull that from the agenda and reschedule. So we'll be discussing consolidated social service funding 2 weeks from tonight. Do we need to vote on that? Is there a motion for that?
I'll move that we remove the item from the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so number 5 is removed. Public input. Are there any cards submitted? I have none. Okay. Seeing none tonight. I do want to make a brief announcement. I want to remind the public that Tuesday, June 4th is the last day that people can bring tree and brush debris from the tornado damage onto the curb, so that's tomorrow. I wanted to thank the public works crews who've just been making heroic efforts getting the streets cleaned. They've worked overtime, they've worked weekends, they've done a marvelous job. Vince Gustafson is our operations deputy director sitting in the back there, and he's the one leading the charge here. I am also really grateful to announce that the University of Illinois today supplied 3 dump trucks and drivers to assist with the effort, and the Urbana Park District is going to be sending 2 trucks with drivers also, which helps immensely in just keeping the stream of debris moving to the Landscape Recycling Center. So that's going to make just an enormous difference in our ability to get this cleaned up this week. But again, tomorrow is the last day that people can bring things to the curb and have it removed by the city. And again, anything under 10 inches in diameter and less than 8 feet in length. The larger materials have to be disposed of by a private contractor.
And that's within the area bounded by
Within the
Windsor Road, Race Street, Philo Road, and Silver Mumford.
Yes, that is the tornado damage area. So thank you all for your cooperation. Okay, we have presentations by Visit Champaign County. Jane DeLuce.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I was asked to speak with you about FY19 highlights and what's coming in FY20. You receive our quarterly reports that outline specific numbers on visitor spending and creating opportunities for residents, and you'll get our annual report at the end of fiscal year 19. Since this date is a lot earlier than when I usually speak with all of you, I've just focused on a couple highlights on what we do to promote Urbana and the greater Champaign County area as a destination to visit, work, and live. For promoting Urbana as a destination to visit, we utilize a visitor's guide, which you have in front of you, one of 70,000 copies, plus our website, social media, digital storytelling campaigns, national advertising, billboards, etc. These are paid for by state tourism grants and matched by local funding partners. On April 16th to 18th, we hosted the Sports Illinois Huddle, which brought in sports planners from around the country. and included tours of sports facilities in Urbana, plus the closing reception at Riggs Beer Company. On September 11th to 13th, we're bringing in the Proven Conference with anticipated 1,300 attendees, and their main base is the Vineyard Church in Urbana. And we recently highlighted a number of museums in Urbana as part of our Museum May blog series Anita Purv's Spurlock Champaign County Historical Archives. I can send you the link if you didn't get a chance to see this blog that's shared on our social media channels. For promoting Urbana as a destination for employment opportunities, we work hand in hand with our area businesses to be successful. We provide direct sales leads and event services for our Urbana hotel partners, which includes Comfort Inn, Roadway, Eastland Suites, Hampton Inn, and Holiday Inn Express, whether it's dropping off visitors guides, attending trade shows together, or providing Illinois Marathon t-shirts and engaging with their staff on fun photo shoots. For our third annual Restaurant Week, participating Urbana restaurants included Silver Creek, Courier Cafe, Dancing Dog, Crane Alley, and the Bread Company. For the Wooden Nickel program that we coordinate during Illinois Marathon Week, both Rick's Bakery and Happy Jack Hat Company participated. And yesterday we provided lighting services for a black hair show at the Urbana Garden Hotel, which saved this area resident significant dollars in hosting a hair show for $400. We recognized Mike Ross and Cranert Center during our Toasted Tourism, and we personally recognized the following cream of the crop workers for outside of ordinary customer service: Amber Talbot from Urbana Country Club, Janet Sosby from the Urbana Park District, Thomas Byler from Brew Lab, and Tracy Barkley from the Solo Gracia. Did you say Gracia? Gracia Farm. Is it Gra? That's what I thought. Yeah, it didn't look right when I spelled it. Thanks. And I'm most proud of the video that we created showcasing the Riggs family and their beer company as an outside of ordinary maker. When residents take pride in where they work and live, they become a community's best ambassador by promoting their destination to friends and families, which 50% of all leisure travel in the U.S. is to visit friends and family. For Urbana as a destination to live, we've developed a partnership with U of I Human Resources, Carl, and other major companies to offer various services and promotional materials to help during the recruiting process. You can see the handout that's tucked in your visitor's guide that we developed. We've also partnered with U of I Admissions to tell the community story to incoming students and their families, including staffing a community welcome booth every day for 6 weeks during summer orientation. We see a ton of audience engagement coming to us from Urbana, meaning that social media users interact with us regularly to show what they care about in the community. We get great feedback from Urbana residents on the Living Outside of Ordinary blogs, as well as hashtag use when they're out at events and businesses. We've also been promoting Uncork Urbana Wine Festival in a number of blogs and Living Outside of Ordinary post, as well as ramping up excitement for the Strawberry Jam Festival. Urbana businesses and attractions also continue to show up a lot on CrowdRiff, which is our tool for tracking user-generated content for influencing visitors and residents alike. And for our residents, today we promoted and attended the Anita Purvis 40th anniversary celebration, and we're providing 200 bags and other materials for the upcoming Jetty Roads Neighborhood Day. There's a lot more highlights, but to keep time short, we are building community and a sense of place. Over the next few months, our board will lead our strategic planning efforts on what's next and promoting this community as a destination to visit, work, and live. And we invite you to participate in that process. I want to thank the Urbana City Council for your strategic partnership and to Rachel Storm for representing Urbana on our board. And I'm happy to answer any questions or if you have any comments. Thank you.
Any questions for Jane? Mary Alice.
Thank you very much. It's always interesting to hear everything that's going on. I was looking over your destination management action plan, and one of the things that you had focused on was increasing local partner revenues by 20%. So my question to you is, will your organization be coming back to us seeking additional funds?
I wish. Not this year. No, I've been told that it's budgeted at the same amount as the last 3 years, and the agreement is supposed to come to you for agreement next year. I mean, for next week.
I was
for
just
signing.
curious how you were going to
Yeah.
increase local partner revenues by 20%.
I would very much like to do that, including the City of Urbana, but we've done it mainly with private partners. We've
Okay.
seen slight increase from our other public partners, both with Champaign, Savoy, Mahomet, Rantoul, and St. Joe, and over the last like 2 or 3 years coming up, and then the rest is through private partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dennis?
And you'll note that the city is considering this evening the establishment of a historic district in our downtown, which would be a great way to advertise our community if we pass that tonight, and if it's accepted by the state organizations that have to qualify that. And also remember that we also have the Joseph Royer Arts and Architecture District of downtown, which ties in with your arts destination number 5, creating and promoting public art tours that highlight various organizations through the greater Champaign County area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Jared?
Hi, Jane. One quick question with the impending legislation across the governor's desk about legalization of recreational efforts. Have you guys been looking at other communities of our size in other states who have passed such legislation to see what kind of efforts those folks are doing to increase tourism and attraction of events and things of that nature? Or are you guys not gotten down that road yet?
We haven't approached it yet. We're collectively, as a state, going to look at it so that our collective group of communities within, we have a state tourism association, and we'll be talking about that first, and then we would break it down to individual communities.
Well, I'm interested to see what the statewide organization has to say and where that comes down to land for us.
Okay. Be happy to follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thanks, Jane.
Thanks.
Next up is the Urbana Business Association with Paris Valderrada.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. So I'll just do a quick review of the UBA and who we are. So we are a nonprofit 501c6, and our mission is to serve our members by promoting Urbana as a dynamic place to live, work, and do business. Actually, as of January of 2019, our board did vote to become a smaller board. So we were up to 15 members, but now we are only up to, we can have up to 9 board members. And so that actually made our meetings more efficient and more effective because we just had less people that we had to get to come to board meetings. So that's been a really good collaboration for us. So as far as membership goes, we actually, our current activities, we do co-op marketing. So we offer opportunities for our businesses to go on TV, such as the CI Living or the Morning Show, and different radio appearance opportunities. We host networking events, so we have our connections events that are the morning or the evening, so it'll be a coffee or a cocktails. So if you're a member business, you can host these events, and we will provide all of the food and the beverage and the marketing and get everybody in the door. We have the Talk of the Town e-newsletter. We also do have social media opportunities where people can send us the information if they have an event or any kind of promotion or anything going on. We'll put that out on our social media platforms. Press releases, we'll send out press releases for our members. Sponsorship opportunities for our different events, Uncork, Sweet Corn, Market, so there's opportunities there for them to promote themselves. Discounts are available, again, on if they want vendor space at our market or Sweet Corn, or the sponsorship opportunities in different areas of the organization. We do offer discounts for members. We offer ribbon cuttings. Currently, our membership base, we have 108 members, and we recruited 10 new members in 18-19 and hosted over 30 ribbon cuttings. And we're actually really pleased to announce that we the Urbana Country Club, who is one of our members, is going to host the UBA holiday party on December 19th from 5:30 to 8:30. So that'll be a really good time. So I do invite everyone out then. I know it's a while from now, but put it on your calendars. And we host many events throughout the community. So we have Market in the Square, which is the indoor farmers market that goes from November through April. This past season, we were actually able to add every Saturday in the spring. Previously, we were doing the second and fourth Saturday, but we were able to obtain the rest of the Saturday dates, with the exclusion or exception of March, which is a little tricky because there's other big events that happen during that time. But for the most part, last season and continuing to this upcoming season, we will be every Saturday in the spring. We have Sweet Corn Festival that is 23rd and 24th of August this year. So that's the biggest festival that happens not only in Urbana but in central Illinois. On Cork Urbana Wine Festival, that is actually coming up this weekend, Saturday the 8th. It goes from 3 to 10 p.m. We have Illinois wineries, live music, a cooking demonstration, food vendors. We do have a backup rain location. The weather's not looking awesome this year for Uncork. It's normally in Meadowbrook Park. We'll probably make the call later this week, but if not, it's going to be at Lincoln Square. Downtown trick-or-treating, we partner with the library each October, and they offer activities inside the library, and then we coordinate with the downtown businesses where the kids and the parents can go trick-or-treating in the different businesses, which allows an opportunity for the businesses or for the people to visit businesses they may not normally visit. We sponsor World's Shortest St. Patrick's Day Parade and with Rewind 92.5, the Urbana Grand Prix, CU Folk and Roots, Boneyards Arts Festival. Some future plans for the market. We are the only market between Champaign and then the market at the square. We don't currently take the SNAP program, but we are actually working with the Land Connection to be able to offer those services for our upcoming season. Riggs is our exclusive beer sponsor for Sweet Corn. And then I'm working with Rachel to do some more exciting things for downtown trick-or-treating, like getting the businesses involved with decorating and things like that. One of the things I mentioned in the packet is our rebrand. So later this fall, we are actually going to go through a rebrand. There's been some identity crisis with the UBA, I think, for some time now, where are we a membership-based organization, are we an event organization, or a promotional organization? People don't quite know who we are because traditionally we haven't been able to focus on member services as a normal chamber would have. So we've decided to just say we are a promotional and events organization, and we're going to rebrand ourselves in that way. We'll come up with a new DBA, a new logo, a marketing campaign. So it's very clear to our businesses and the community what we do and what they should expect from us. So a funding request would be consistent with 18-19, which we received $57,815 this past fiscal year. And just to point out, we did receive a $5,000 cut for Sweet Corn for 2019 due to the process of going through Public Arts Commission for that funding. And we could only get up to 10 instead of the 15 that we normally do. So that's what I have. Thank you. And any questions or comments?
Eric?
Do you yet have a name for the rebranded organization, or are you having a competition or anything?
We're going to start that process after Sweet Corn. We're going to get through festival season, so we know it's in the works and what we're going to do starting in the fall, because we'll probably launch everything January 2020. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Paris.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to have 4 presentations from staff related to various aspects of the budget. And first one will be on the Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund, second on staffing changes, third on the Facilities Condition Assessment Report, and the fourth on the Capital Improvement Plan. And we've been asked, please write your questions down and hold them to the end, and we'll take all the questions at the end, and that way we can get these presentations, make progress through these presentations. So first up is the VERF and financial policies. Don Ho.
Good evening. What I have here tonight is a presentation regarding the Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund, or also known as the VERF, and a recommendation to revise the city financial policies in fiscal year 20. A little background on the VERF. So the VERF collects fees from other cities' funds to pay for replacement of capital assets. The purpose of the VERF is to basically make sure the city has enough money for future purchases. Each item in the VERF is required to have a life of more than 5 years and value above $5,000. The current total value of all assets included in the VERF is about $15 million in fiscal year 20. In fiscal year 16, finance staff performed an analysis and determined that the VERF would be $2.7 million short of what was needed to replace scheduled equipment. The solution included in the proposed budget for fiscal year 16 was to transfer additional funds from the city general fund over 3 years to correct the funding problem. As budgets became tighter, this amount was reduced and the period for making the correction was extended. Okay. This chart here shows what would happen to the VERF fund balance without the additional transfer from the general fund. As you can see, fund balance started to decline significantly from fiscal year 29 to fiscal year 35 before slowly increasing again. The largest deficit here on this chart is around negative $1.6 million in fiscal year 33. So in fiscal year 19, staff introduced the vehicle leasing program with a goal to eliminate the need to pre-fund some vehicle replacements, reducing the underfunding problem in the VERF. As a result, the transfer amount in FY19 was reduced to $119,000 from $180,000 in fiscal year 18 after the approval of the vehicle leasing program by the City Council. So here's the current practice of the VERF. So the city sets aside funds in advance for purchases. The replacement schedule is updated periodically by staff. Funding level is at 90% of the projected replacement cost. Inflation is assumed at 2%. And there's an additional annual transfer of $119,000 from the general fund. This chart here shows what the fund balance for the VERF looks like with the current practice. So the green line here shows the fund balance with the additional transfer. The yellow line shows the fund balance without the additional transfer as shown in the previous chart. With the additional transfer from the general fund, fund balance for the VERF would remain healthy until at least 2039. However, this means more money would be taken out of the general fund since the majority of the transfer come from the general fund. At a time when the city is still in the process of correcting a structural deficit, this has placed some constraints on the process. So following further review of the VERF, staff found it more cost-effective to continue to purchase vehicles with city funds rather than leasing, and then plan to issue debt at appropriate time to avoid a deficit in this fund. And this will eliminate the need for an annual transfer of $119,000 from the general fund. So there are two main changes related to managing the VERF. The first one is to reduce the annual charges made to various operating budgets from 90% to 70% of projected replacement costs. The second one is to use long-term borrowing to finance equipment purchases during periods when the fund balance would fall below 10% of the total value of assets included in the VERF. So the chart here shows the difference in fund balance between issuing debt and not issuing debt at 70% funding level. The red line shows how the fund balance would be affected without issuing debt. The green line shows how the fund balance would perform when the city issues debt. Without issuing debt, the fund balance would go into a deficit eventually, starting from fiscal year 2033. If the city issues debt, the fund balance would remain stable through fiscal year 39. This would have a significant impact because the VERP would be able to stay healthy, thus reducing transfer from the general fund. Although the funding level will decrease from 90% to 70%, the transfer amount from the general fund to the VERP will not decrease significantly, mostly due to rising costs of assets. In FY19, the transfer amount from the general fund to VERP is $1.44 million, including the $119,000 related to fixing the projected deficit. In FY20, the transfer amount would be $1.14 million, giving the city more flexibility in the budgeting process. The financial policy will need to be revised in fiscal year 20. There are two specific changes related to the VERP that I mentioned before. The first one is to revise the funding level to 70%. The second one is to add some language to allow use of debt for capital assets. There is also a minor wording change in regards to the general fund reserve that is unrelated to the VERP. The reason is that staff wants to clarify that the reserve level of 15% is a minimum and not a goal. And be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Yeah, well, we're going to hold questions till the end. But I did want to say congratulations to you and Callie Joe on your new baby.
Thank you.
So we have Todd Rent and Carol Mitten to discuss staffing changes in Public Works and others.
Good evening. We're here to provide an overview of the staffing changes for the upcoming fiscal year. As we move forward, I think it's important to note that our leadership has strongly communicated a commitment to promoting a workplace that is positive, productive, respectful, and inclusive. We believe that even with the difficult staff reductions that we're going to discuss this evening, the budget, these reductions have been undertaken in a manner that reflects that commitment. As you're aware, staffing costs are a significant driver of recurring general fund expenditures. As a result, staff reductions are a difficult but necessary component of long-term budget reduction. The proposed budget reflects that reality. That said, I would like to note that the staffing changes and organizational initiatives that we'll discuss below will also promote a more competitively compensated, highly engaged, and highly productive city workforce. Staffing costs account for roughly 71% of general fund expenditures through wages, benefits, and pensions. And as we're all aware, these costs tend to grow over time. And notwithstanding that growth, over the last 2 years, the city has made significant progress in controlling those costs through reductions in overall staffing. In fiscal year 2018, the city implemented a voluntary separation incentive program that offered a cash incentive to selected individuals who voluntarily elected to resign within a specified period of time. In fiscal year 2019, the city implemented a vacancy review committee to carefully scrutinize each staffing request to ensure that we are taking every opportunity to reduce staffing through routine attrition. These two initiatives, when combined with the closure of the Urbana Civic Center, reduced staffing by 4.7 FTEs over a 2-year time period. As we look forward at the staffing changes in the fiscal year 2020 budget, we believe that we will continue to progress towards our budget reduction goals. As we approach the fiscal year 2020 budgeting cycle, city leadership conducted a comprehensive inventory of external services to identify any opportunities to reduce staffing levels through scaling back of city services. Also, city leadership conducted a review of internal support services and finally offered a second round of the VSIP incentive program. This process identified 5.25 FTEs in reductions for fiscal year 2020. As a result, by the end of fiscal year 2020, the city will have reduced staffing by a total of 9.95 FTEs across fiscal years 2018, 2019, and 2020. However, in conjunction with those reductions, the city also plans to implement 3 measures that will and are intended to enhance the engagement and effectiveness of our workforce. These measures include a restructuring and reorganization of the management of the Public Works Department. Oh, sorry. The performance of a classification and compensation analysis for non-bargaining unit positions, and the implementation of an organizational development initiative. Carol will now review the reorganization of the Public Works Department.
I'm just going to hit the highlights of this. So as we've talked about in the past, it was my view that the Public Works was top-heavy in management. We had 7 designated managers and 8 people being paid at the management level, and we've reorganized that so that we have 3 designated managers. So in order to right-size that, we have our assistant city engineers retaining their positions as they are currently structured, and the big change is taking place in operations. So we've created a new position called the Deputy Director for Operations, and we've promoted Vince Gustafson into that position. He has all of the operational divisions in Public Works reporting to him. That's through 6 supervisors now, and it gives us greater flexibility across the whole operational all the operational units to redeploy staff as needed for something like, I don't know, a tornado cleanup is a good example. And it, excuse me, it's also empowering our supervisors in a way that they hadn't been in the past, which is good for us as well. Another important step that we've taken is in the sustainability area. There's been a realignment there. We were changing Scott Tess's title from Sustainability Manager to one that better reflects a broadened role that we have for him now. So in the org chart that we sent you, I think it says Sustainability Officer, but that's probably going to be expanded to be Sustainability and Resiliency Officer. So there will be the same focus on sustainability, but narrowing it, and then Scott will have some responsibility for the business side of the LRC, which is another aspect of sustainability. The Arbor supervisor will continue to manage the operation of the LRC, and then Scott will also have responsibility for the resiliency of our organization, the government as a whole, and he'll be working in collaboration with partners in police and fire who are already involved in emergency response, but also focusing on something that we haven't done a good job of seriously attending to in the past, which is continuity of operations for the government itself. And then we also have a realignment of the role of the individual who was formerly titled Assistant to the Public Works Director. The new title there is Administrative Services Coordinator, with a greater emphasis on internal support and providing administrative support to the managers. And that's, in a nutshell, what we've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. In addition to the reorganization, the city also plans to conduct a review of our classification and compensation system for non-bargaining unit positions. Our existing system was developed and implemented when the average tenure of both public and private sector employees was significantly longer. As a result, our existing system places heavy emphasis on longevity and other initiatives that are either tied directly or indirectly to tenure. In that sense, the rewards, the incentives, and expenses are backloaded towards the latter portion of the employee's career with the city. At this point, we believe we need to determine whether a system that was built to maximize awards and incentives after 15, 20, or 25 years of employment is optimally competitive within a regional and a national labor market that is trending towards much shorter tenure, such as 6 to 8 years. And so in short, we believe that we have a great staff, and we want to make sure that we are fine-tuning our resources and our compensation and benefits resources in order to increase and maximize our market competitiveness. We believe that the classification and compensation study will help us to do that. Finally, the city plans to undertake an organizational, implement an organizational development training initiative to build and to train leadership, management, and overall staff towards a culture, again, that is positive, productive, respectful, and inclusive. The proposed staffing changes place the city on track with our budget reduction goals. However, we also believe that the streamlining of our management structure in the Public Works Department, the performance of a classification and compensation study, and the implementation of an organizational development initiative will promote a more competitively compensated, highly engaged, and highly productive workforce. Thank you.
Next up is Vince Gustafson, who will be doing the facilities condition assessments.
Well, good evening. I'm here tonight to present a summary of the findings of the first phase of our facilities master planning effort, and that is the facilities condition assessment that has been recently completed. I'd like to start off with an introduction. I'm Vince Gustafson, as Carol mentioned, and my new role is Deputy Director of Operations for Urbana Public Works. I've been with the city for 15 years now. I was hired in 2004 as a building maintenance tech. So from 2004 till 2012, till I was promoted to supervisor and then facilities manager, and now my current position, I had a hands-on, day-to-day operational understanding of what it truly takes and the effort it takes to maintain the facilities and the importance that it has on our day-to-day operations and the impact on the work environment. So I have to say that I really appreciate the opportunity to present this information today. I want to start off with some background on the process. In April of 2018, we released a request for proposals, and that's for the purposes of hiring a consultant to provide facilities master plan services for the city. And I'd like to start out by reading a very specific goal we set for this project, and that's the development of sound, actionable, and fiscally responsible facilities planning that supports the entire city government organization by providing safe and inviting work environments that meet the varying operational needs of all the city departments. This isn't a facilities project, nor is it a public works project. This is an organizational project, and all the different functions that we serve, the facilities play a huge role in that, and there's large varying differences in the needs of each facilities as it relates to the department. the end deliverable, hopefully, of this project will be the development of a facilities master plan that focuses on the preservation and potential redevelopment and/or readapting of current facilities, as well as the identification and planning for new facilities to establish a framework for the anticipated City of Urbana facility needs for the next decade and beyond. And the facilities master plan is essentially going to provide the roadmap for all of our future capital improvement spending on facilities efforts. So to undertake this monumental task, we thought it best to divide it up into 3 phases. The first phase of that is the facilities condition assessment, which I'm presenting to you now. The next 2 phases we'll be including in our next presentation in our budget request for the capital improvement plan, and that is a space needs and programming study, and then finally development of a long-term facilities master plan. So the best way I would think about the facilities condition assessment that I want to present tonight would be as if you were going out and to buy a new house. You'd hire an inspector to come, and they're going to look at your mechanicals, your electrical systems, and everything at your house, and they're going to provide you a report of the current condition and what you can expect. That's kind of along the lines of what I'm presenting to you tonight. Now, that inspection isn't going to tell you, do you need 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or where your house is located. Those are the kinds of questions that would be more adequate to the space and programming needs. In that study, we're going to look at how we work, what's the working environment, what are our workflows in our existing facilities, how do the departments utilize them, and how do the different departments work in and amongst the facilities, what proximities are important. And then we're going to look at those relationships and determine, are we using our existing space efficiently? Are there opportunities where we can capitalize and reorganize a bit on how we use the existing facilities? And also, are our space needs just inadequate? Do we need more room to do the work we do? I can say that we have people working in closets in some situations. We're really, really tight and at the in a need to expand. I can say that definitely. So with phase 3, we'll take the findings of phase 2 and 1, the condition of the asset, and does it suit our operational needs, and we'll use that to develop a long-term plan which to guide our decisions on. So we released the RFP, and through a collaborative process with a facilities committee that we've assembled that's representative of all the departments, we received approximately 7 very well-crafted proposals, and through an evaluation process and review, it really was a pretty simple choice for us. It was almost unanimous that the Chicago-based firm Canon Design would be the right choice to help us through this process. A few key distinguishers that set them apart, and number 1, that's a very clear and well-defined process, and also a specific approach to trying to prolong our existing asset life. One thing to note about Canon Design is that all of their work is done in-house, and there are no sub-consultants. So I've learned from experience that that really helps streamline the process, and you don't lose information in translation from one firm to another, and that was evident in this process as well. Canon Design employed their facilities optimization solution division. That's a mouthful. And that is a team essentially of architects, engineers, cost estimators, and software specialists, amongst others, who work as a collaborative team that put together this large volume of data that defines the reports that I'm going to present to you here shortly. And probably most important was their people-oriented approach and their human-centered view at things, and their understanding of how this goes beyond just the physical asset and the condition of the facility, but they truly understand the impact that a facility can have on the work environment and productivity amongst the different departments. I can say, from my experience, just something as simple as putting a coat on the paint of the walls, a new carpet, can make a huge impact. So when we discussed the impact of how all of our people work within facilities and what we can do to readapt and remodel and fix up what we have now, they understand that. And as we go into our space needs and programming efforts, which will be a much more collaborative city effort, they understand how much of a role that plays in our decisions. So I'm going to go over kind of why we're undertaking this in the first place. In the 15 years I've been here, we've almost at a completely 100% reactive approach to facilities maintenance, and that's based upon our resources and funding and the staffing that we have. This was a great opportunity to take a step back and just look at all of our facilities and look at the big picture and see how we wanted to best approach this. So the assessment answers 4 key questions. It identifies what facilities we own, what is the condition of each of those facilities, what needs can we expect currently as well as over the course of the next 10 years, and what is the best plan or approach to address these needs. So in terms of process, as I started to wrap my head around this from the beginning, I knew it was going to be just a monumental amount of information that would have to be categorized. Luckily, within the past year, we've implemented a new work order and asset management system. So I was able to identify the facilities within scope and export a lot of our existing building data and maintenance histories directly to Canon Design. They were able to take that information and set that into their standardized templates for their assessments so that when they were here and showed up on site, it really streamlined the process. And understand how to take all that information, you really have to understand systems. So their methodology is based upon strategic replacement of components based upon observed field conditions. So aside from us handing over a bunch of data and photographs and just looking from a book, all the assumptions that are made here were based upon a 3.5-day tour with myself and Troy Richmond, our current building maintenance tech, taking them on a guided tour of all our facilities and taking photographic logs and evidence of looking at it, not just, kind of blanket overview from a book. This is from actually looking and analyzing their existing equipment. So if you start with the facility, we break that down into systems. And I'll dig into the systems a little deeper here as I move through the slides, but the systems include electrical systems, plumbing systems, we have life and safety systems, elevator systems, and then from there we break it down to components. So each component or each system has a multitude of components, and a perfect example of that is an electrical system in a facility. So in this room alone, we have wiring devices, light switches, we have interior lighting, we have a sub-panel that provides the power to this room, and then just outside we have exterior lighting. Those are all considered components of a larger system. So the grouping of the components form a discipline condition index for the system, and the combination of the system creates a larger rating for the facility of itself. And each individual facilities report has hundreds and hundreds of photographic logs of each individual component. So as I said, on the component and subcomponent level, each is assigned a priority. And these rank from priority 1, which is currently critical and require immediate attention, to priority 2, which will become critical in the next 2 years. Priority 3 is a 3 to 5 year window. Priority 4 means that is something we should consider within the scope of the assessment, which is 10 years. And then priority 0 we did observe all the components, but anything that seemed to have a life beyond 10 years was not included in this study. Just like if you took your car to a mechanic to see what was wrong with it, they're not going to list every component on your car. They're only going to tell you what you need to be aware of over a certain time frame. Should also note that each component was assigned a expected time frame listed by the priority here, as well as a replacement value. So now that we've moved up from a component level that's combined into a system level rating for each facility, the combination of the system levels are averaged out to use what's called the Facilities Condition Index. And this is a quantifiable result that allows us to look subjectively at each facility and get a good framework of where that facility ranks in its current condition as a snapshot. So essentially, we're looking at the Facilities Condition Index is the deferred maintenance deficiencies. So that's all the identified deficiencies within a certain time frame that we've found in the facilities, divided by the total current replacement value. So as you can see, each of our facilities has been assigned either a good, fair, poor, critical, or divest recommendation. So what do we find? I could say it really wasn't a surprise that we found, on average, our facilities are found to be in poor condition. Over the first 5 years, we've identified $5 million worth of deferred maintenance deficiency items. And if we look at that over a course of a 10-year stretch, that number reaches to $8.2 million. Based upon our findings, our facilities are predicted to degrade, and several of these facilities will be declining to critical condition, with a couple actually, with one in bordering on a divest situation. And I also want to point out in this slide too that the cost included in this report, as well as all of the studies, are direct cost. So these just represent the demolition, the labor, and the materials required to replace these items. It does not include any architectural, engineering fees. And when we looked at the cost of replacement values of the facilities, it does not include land acquisitions too. So what this allows us to do is use the reports as a tool to build projects off of. We don't want to double count the engineering and architectural costs. We can isolate and pull and separate all these deferred maintenance projects into planned projects, and then add in that additional, which could be up to 40% for those additional costs. This slide here represents the facilities that are included in the scope of work. As you can see, we have the building name, the year built, the size, and then the direct cost current replacement value of each facility, averaging to a $36 million approximately current replacement value. I want to note that the Urbana parking deck downtown was not included as part of this initial study because we recently performed a facilities condition assessment on that particular facility, but we will be including it in our space need and master planning efforts. So this graph also shows us the identified 5-year needs and the facilities condition index at 5 years, as well as the 10 years, and the projected facilities condition index at 10 years. And at this point, I'll kind of run through each of these facilities quickly. Starting with fire substation number 2, as we can see, is a poor condition in 5 years and projected to continue to pour over the course of 10 years. I'll point out here that each these facilities has included with it a replacement value for an ADA assessment. This is just an allocation for each facility for it to do a separate standalone compliance assessment. A full-blown ADA compliance was not included in the scope of work, but we'll be performing that work separately, as I'll present here in just a bit. Fire Station 3, this is a substation located on North Lincoln Avenue, currently in critical condition and progressing to be that way as well for 10 years. The landfill pump house, this is a small monitoring station near the Landscape Recycling Center. As you can see, poor, trending towards divest, and that's mostly because of the chemicals involved in the monitoring there have led to excessive wear in the mechanical systems inside that facility. The Arbor Division shop houses our Landscape Recycling Center operations, as well as our Landscape and Arbor Division. That facility is poor, trending towards critical. Oh, sorry. Our Landscape Recycling ticket booth that processes all the payments at the Landscape Recycling Center, currently in poor, trending to poor. This facility, the Urbana City building, currently in fair condition, probably one of our more recent facilities, major remodeling efforts, and of course that completed in 1998 and 1999. So it's been a while since we've undertaken a City of Urbana facilities project of that scope. I'll pause here on the Urbana Civic Center because this is probably the most telling of all the reports, all the findings in the reports that were provided. And it really underscores, the difficult decision that we had to make to close this facility, and also serves as kind of a microcosm of what could happen unless we change our funding strategies for facilities. As you can see here, we're currently in a recommendation to divest the property, and the bulk of these costs, our immediate needs, have to do, as you can see, with the different disciplines or systems that I outlined earlier, from the architectural, ranging primarily from a complete failure of the roofing systems and the pyramids and the skylights, to a complete need to replace all the interior finishes, from the flooring to the curtains, as well as the highly inefficient storefront windows and doors and entry systems. The site improvements from the walks and the ramps, communications, the electrical systems are outdated and obsolete. We would need to completely replace all of the service panels and breakers in that facility. The fire protection, we have a small fire protection system for the stove that is in good condition, but there's no other fire protection system in that large public event space. Also, like the other sections, the mechanical, plumbing, safety, security, and structural, it really outlines what happens when we're not properly investing and planning for our facilities maintenance and infrastructure projects. I'll move on to our training facility for Urbana Police Firing Range, currently in fair condition but trending towards poor. Urbana Public Works facility, once again fair, trending to poor. We have a small hazardous material storage shed that holds our painting supplies and other such materials, and that is in critical condition, mostly because of a poor situation with the roof and the specialty heating and lighting system, explosion-proof, in there that are much more expensive to replace than your traditional heating systems. We have some small other storage sheds, mostly in need of roof and rotting doorway replacement. Our Urbana storage facility, which has been very helpful in some of our space needs, but obviously will require a considerable investment to keep that facility from degrading to a critical situation as well. So as we can see here, when we prioritize kind of our at-risk buildings, obviously starting with the Civic Center, we have several facilities that without any massive planning and infrastructure replacement plan will be trending towards that outcome. The pump house, as I said, the paint shed, the fire stations, the recycling center, and the Urbana storage facility, which, when we're looking at the significant investment here, it really outlines the importance for our facilities master planning, because just as a few hypothetical situations, if we look at Fire Station 3 with it in a poor condition that it's in, the considerable amount of money with the redevelopment going on in that area, with the expansion of North Lincoln Avenue, it could prove in our best interest that fire station may not even be located in that area. So prior to making any substantial investment in that property, which are really, really needed immediately, we need to make sure we make the right choice and know the long-term plans for that site. Another situation of the importance in planning would be the Arbor Division Shop. As they just discussed, the reorganization of Public Works, now that Arbor and Landscape are not necessarily their own division, but more of a section of operations, a space needs and programming study may determine that it's more efficient for those operations to be under roof in one facility with an expansion of the Public Works. So having that master planning in place sooner rather than later will prevent us from making the costly mistake of sinking money into facilities that may ultimately not be in our best interest. So as I said, as I just touched on the importance of proactive planning. So Cannon Design, as part of this project, offers, several different strategic approach, and I think that's the key here is making smart data-driven decisions and being strategic in how we invest our limited infrastructure and capital improvement funds. And a few options that they suggest is an urgency approach, where if money wasn't an issue, we can address all the priority 1 and priority 2 needs. Would be a targeted approach where we could just address the at-risk facilities that I described. There could be a system priority approach, an all-in approach, a specific budget approach, an energy reduction approach, or a mixture or a combination of several different options, which in our particular case is what we'll be recommending. As I stated in the beginning, our goal here is, the development of sound, actionable, and fiscally responsible facilities planning. So obviously, the all-in approach isn't really actionable or fiscally responsible, given the current financial state of the city. Also, a targeted approach where we just address the at-risk is not fiscally responsible because of the risk of sunk costs in investing in facilities that we may choose are not efficient or operationally best for us. So what we'll be proposing here is the hybrid approach. And we're recommending that we proceed with Phase 2, the space needs and programming, and Phase 3, the facilities master planning, next fiscal year. And this will allow us to have that plan in place so that we can start quickly addressing the bulk of needs that are found in the reports. We're recommending also an urgency approach, and that's we address immediately the priority 1 required life safety deficiencies that we found in these assessments. And that'll be two separate studies. One is an ADA compliance, making sure that all of our facilities meet the required guidelines of ADA. We'll be looking at 2 things, what's recommended versus what's required, and then we'll be performing a life safety audit, and those will look at all of the life safety systems within our facilities. That's our sprinkler systems, our fire alarm panels, emergency lighting, and such things to make sure that we do have safe working environments for our staff, and that we're meeting all the requirements that we expect from anyone else in the city. So to accomplish these means, we have $50,000 remaining in this fiscal year for facilities capital improvement, and we'll be requesting another $50,000 in FY20 for a total of $100,000 to address the immediate priority 1 needs that I just discussed, while we move forward with the full facilities master planning effort that will give us that roadmap, like I said, by this time next year. I also want to point out that an energy reduction approach is a strategy that we apply in all of our facilities projects. So anytime we undertake any project, we look, there's a way we can be sustainability, from LED lighting to high insulated windows or overhead doors. So that's something we roll into every single project. So what I presented here is a really brief summary of a just really monumental amount of data. Each of these facilities is a standalone assessment, averaging from about 100 to 150 pages apiece. And it documents every component that leads to the information. Then I will make that all available to everyone here. Just for the sake of time, I wanted to give a brief overview of what we found. And I guess we're saving questions for the end.
Yeah, the questions are piling up behind the floodgates, but we've got one more presentation to go, and then we can have at it. So this is a presentation on the capital improvement plan, and you'll be happy to know there are a lot more pictures this year for the first time. So.
While Brad's pulling that up, I'll just get started with my introduction. So I just wanted to give a couple of introductory comments. The first is, well, we're
Could you
presenting...
introduce the people with you?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Brad Bennett. He's our Assistant City Engineer for Drainage and Development, and then we have Craig Schonkweiler, who's our Assistant City Engineer for Transportation, and then we have Vince Gustafson, our new Deputy Director for Operations. This presentation is focused on how we're spending our money and how we establish our priorities. We're not spending time in the presentation on the different funding sources, but if you have questions about that, we'd be happy to answer those. I want to remind everybody that the CIP is a funding plan. It is not a work schedule. So there's a lot of variables that influence when we can deliver the projects. So this is what we're funding, and we hope to be able to move forward on what we fund when we fund it, but we are not always able to for a variety of reasons, including staffing resources. And then I wanted to look at this very first slide to put in context what we are going to be sharing with you in more detail in a minute, which is we've taken most of the major asset classes and we've put replacement values on them. These are just ballpark figures based on benchmark sources. But when you look at that, that's our what we have. And this doesn't even include everything, but it's the major classes. It's $1.2 billion worth of asset value. And then that tiny little dot that's to the right of the big pie is how much we spend on repairs and replacements of all of those asset classes in a typical year. And that is less than 1% of the value. So if you're thinking about that in terms of if everything had a 100-year life and everything was in good condition, that wouldn't keep up with the demand. So just like Vince was saying, everything's on a trajectory to get worse if we continue as we are. That is the high-level takeaway from our presentation tonight. So I'll turn it over to Brad now.
Thank you. I'd like to start out with just a couple of fast facts about the sanitary and storm sewer systems. So we have 102 miles of pipe in the ground, 2,331 sanitary manholes, replacement value estimated at $102 million. And this year we're budgeting $844,000 for repairs and rehab. Now that's a little higher than we typically spend in an annual year, but using the $844,000, that's less than 1% of the system value. In fact, it's 0.82% to be precise. For the storm sewer system, we have 143 miles of pipe in the ground, 8,272 manhole and inlet structures, an estimated replacement value of $143 million. We've got $1.07 million budgeted for repairs. Once again, that's a little higher than we have typically spent in the past, but it's still less than 1% of the value of the system. On an exciting news front, we are doing a stormwater master plan to provide us some guidance moving forward as far as being able to prioritize our repairs and rehab. We're going to be having Crawford Murphy and Tilley, who's a local consulting firm out of Springfield, Illinois, will be performing it. And the last master plan that we've been using dates back to 1980, so this will be a long time overdue. And we anticipate in the future we'll probably do something similar for the sanitary sewer system, is do a master planning effort with that to once again help us better identify and prioritize how we make our repairs and rehab. So moving into how we prioritize our repairs, the first three you'll see on the list, the collapses, the sinkholes, the loss of service, those are typically what we call reactive repairs. So when those items happen, we have to react, we have to fix it. When we're doing those type of repairs, we're also kind of limited in the way we can repair that. We typically have to do what they call the open cut or the dig the street up method. The last three on there are more of what I would call proactive. So on those, we're identifying the problem in advance, and that gives us a number of options when it comes to repairing that. So for the proactive ones, we're looking at issues identified during our televised and cleaning of the pipes. Unfortunately, sewer pipes are all on the ground, so you can't go out and look at them like roads or sidewalks or facilities. So, we spend quite a bit of money and a lot of labor hours going out and actually televising the pipes so we can see what the conditions of them are. So we're only repairing what really needs to be repaired. The last two apply to our sanitary sewer system. We have some areas in town where unfortunately they use concrete pipe for the sanitary sewer. The hydrogen sulfide gas that's present in sewage creates a corrosion issue for those pipes. So we know those pipes, have to be, rehabbed and replaced earlier than other pipes. So we've been focusing on getting those addressed in a proactive method. And then the last one, we really haven't, unfortunately, had the funds to focus on. That is areas of high infiltration and inflow. So when you have the real wet weather events, when you see the manholes surcharging in the street or people with water in their basement, a lot of that results from extraneous water or clean water coming into our sanitary sewer system from those wet weather events. So talking about a reactive repair versus a proactive repair. So if you're looking at the picture there on your left, that's a reactive repair. So you can see the pipe has physically collapsed. There's only one way to repair that, and that's to go out and open cut or dig that up. The repair that you're looking at on your right, that's a proactive repair. So you can see the pipe is in bad shape, it's cracked, it's starting to oval or crush. But on that, we have a number of options. We can do the traditional open cut replacement. We can also use the cured in place pipelining method, which is a trenchless method. It's possible that we could also use pipe bursting as another trenchless technology. And the advantage of a proactive repair, you have more choices. You can schedule it better than you can a reactive, which you have to do immediately. Results typically in a lower cost. Obviously, you're avoiding the loss of service. There's nothing worse than when your sewer pipe is broken or the city's, collapses and breaks and you don't have sewage service to your house. And finally, it's less disruption to the traffic system. If we can use the trenchless technology, we don't have to tear up the streets. We don't have to, close them to do the digging. It really benefits everyone. So to give you, talk a little bit about this cured in place pipe technology. So this was patented back in 1977 by Insituform here in the United States. It really took off and grew in use in the 80s and 90s. In the mid-1990s, Insituform's patent ran out, so they didn't have the exclusive rights to it, and the price significantly dropped. So right now, this cured in place lining is the most popular sewer repair technology here in the United States and probably worldwide. And what it involves is the ability to insert a new pipe inside the existing pipe. So if you can imagine a giant tube sock that they soak in a resin and basically propel through the pipe and then use pressurized high temperature steam to push it up against the walls and cure that resin so it hardens like a fiberglass shell like on a boat. Is the process. So it's really great. We don't have to dig up the streets. We can do it, through the existing manholes. And it has the potential to save us a lot of money. To give you an example, we had 2 sewer pipes on Ray Street between Florida and Montclair. This is back in 2006. They were about 80% cracked, and they were ovaling, so they were starting to crush. They had broken on the 4 quadrants, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And they were in bad shape. We were afraid they would fail. We priced out doing the cured in place lining. We estimated it at $210,000 for that particular location. We looked at the open cut, which would have been $543,000 is what we estimated cost at, so it was at least twice as expensive. When we got done to actually bidding it, the cured in place lining came in at $134,000, which was 4 times less than the cost to open cut it. So you can see the advantage. If you can get in and make the repairs before the pipes actually collapse, it can save you a significant amount of money. So, and I'm glad to say that we are planning a big cured in place pipe project here in fiscal year 20. We're going to look at spending at least $500,000. So we're excited to be doing that amount of money in a proactive type repair. So some fast facts on the sidewalks. We have 180 miles of sidewalks in Urbana. Majority of them are concrete. I have about 160 and a half miles of concrete, 16 miles of brick sidewalk, and 3.5 miles of asphalt. We estimate replacement value at $63 million. For this fiscal year, we budgeted $200,000, and that breaks down to about $125,000 for concrete sidewalk repairs, $75,000 for brick sidewalks. And I'll point out, that's outside of transportation projects. So the transportation projects are funding sidewalk repairs within reconstruction and resurfacing projects out of the MFT and other funds that they use for their road projects. That's not coming out of the CIP funds, that $200,000 that we have there. But that $200,000, that's less than 0.5% of the value of the sidewalk system. And I'll point out, we are currently working on a pedestrian master plan. We're hoping to complete it in this coming fiscal year, and hopefully that'll help us focus on prioritizing areas, but you're going to find out we haven't been able to address many areas because our funds are being used up by one particular type of priority. And when we've done these projects, sidewalk repairs, we typically focused on curb ramps because we think they are the greatest barrier to accessibility for disabled folks. So we've done a lot of curb ramp repairs and not as much flat work repair, I would say, over the last decade. So when we look at repair priorities, our first and highest is always the ADA accommodation request. And ADA means American with Disabilities Act. So if a advocate for a disabled person or a disabled person themselves calls in and requests that a certain at a certain location that the sidewalk or the ramp is improved to allow them to be able to use that, we make that our highest priority when we come to sidewalk repairs. And for the last couple of years, all our budgeted monies have gone into accommodating or eliminating those accommodation requests. So we're making the repair and fixing it so it meets the current ADA standards. Kind of the next one, and we talked about this a little bit before, the transportation resurfacing and reconstruction projects, and Craig maybe talk a little bit more about that too, but they're required as part of those projects to make improvements to bring the sidewalk up to what the current ADA standards are. And really the last two bullet points on there we have not had an opportunity to get because, like I said, all our money is going into catching up with the ADA accommodation request. But if we had funds available, we would start looking at working on priority areas identified as part of the sidewalk inventory study, and then once we got those done, moving into the non-priority areas. But just to point out, the only sidewalk repairs and replacements that are getting done are through the transportation projects and for this $200,000 that's budgeted as part of the CIP. Operations hasn't been able to do sidewalk repair because their focus right now is on fixing streets. So our sidewalks are kind of continuing to worsen because really outside of street projects and some limited requests for the accommodation requests, we're not replacing sidewalks. So the city had a sidewalk inventory done by the Regional Planning Commission in 2016. They went out and looked at the condition of every sidewalk in Urbana as well as Champaign, Savoy. And it provided us a great wealth of data, and I want to share some of that with you. But they looked at two primary ways to score these sidewalks. The first was for the ADA compliance, and they're looking at PROAG standards, which stand for Public Right-of-Way and Accessibility Guidelines. So this is to make the sidewalk accessible. And then they looked separately at what the condition, the structural condition of the sidewalk was. So for the for the ADA compliance, they were looking at, width, cross slope, longitudinal slope, offsets, which is where the one sidewalk panel pushes up above the other. Those are things that have great impacts on the accessibility of the sidewalk. Looking at the inventory, there's about 51 miles of sidewalk in Urbana out of, remember, the 180 that we have that have a compliance score of less than 60, so that's about 28% of the system. And you can see, I wanted to show you an example of what a sidewalk that was below the 60 looked at. So this is an example on Cottage Grove, south of Washington, and you can see this particular sidewalk has some excessive cross slope. I'll point out, you can see where our operation crews have put some cold patch to fix the offset for the able-bodied individuals so they don't trip on it. But if you're in a wheelchair, it would be very difficult to be able to navigate that section of sidewalk. That's why it received such a low score. And then looking at the physical condition, so we first talk about ADA condition. Physical condition is different because then we're looking at cracks, fractures, spalling, offsets. I know offsets is a common denominator between the two, but looking at the inventory, there's about 26 miles of sidewalk that are below a condition score of 60, and that's about 14.5% of the system. And here, once again, as an example, just to show you what an actual picture of sidewalk that would fall in a condition score less than 53.5. So you can see it's pretty broke up and fractured to hit that score. Then on streetlights, a couple of fast facts on that one. We have 3,796 light poles and fixtures. We estimate the replacement value at $57 million. We're looking at budgeting $600,000 in the fiscal year for repairs, and that's outside of transportation projects again. And just to point out that that's a one-time project-based cost. We don't budget any money annually. These were kind of special projects that came up. The first was the Ceres Streetlight, which is down on Nevada between Lincoln and Matthews, and then on Matthews, basically from Nevada all the way up to Springfield. Those are some antiquated systems that have high voltage, and the poles are in really poor structural condition, so they're a hazard to the public as well as our crews. So we budgeted $500,000 in fiscal year for that, and we're looking at an intersection lighting improvement project with the Community Development Block Grant funds on Kinch, basically between Washington and Florida. That's just intersection lighting, as opposed to the Ceres lighting, which is entire street lighting. And then I'm proud to report we do have phase one of the Ceres street light coming up here in fiscal year 20. There'll be a phase two to follow up in fiscal year 2021. And we're looking at hopefully to start as soon as school is out for the university in the summer of 2020 with that street light replacement. With that, I'll turn it over to Craig.
So with our street system, we have about 135 centerline miles of road with about 357 lane miles. A lane mile is 12 foot wide by 1 mile long. That takes into account, more of like a 4-lane road than say just a center line, which is just straight down the center. We're estimating about an $800 million replacement value. This year we're at about $6 million budgeted. That's about 0.75% of the total value. This year's abnormally high. We have other projects like the MCOR project where we have some high costs. We're significantly less than that on an annual basis. The types of methods that we use to rehabilitate, preserve our streets is we provide surface seal. You see the picture in the right there. It's almost like a chocolate milk that the contractors put down. We do those preservations about every, say, 2 cycles after a road has been resurfaced. We also do bituminous surface treatments. That's typically called your chip seals. Those help preserve. Both of those would be what we would consider to be proactive approaches. And then we have patching, which is largely reactive. Over the last couple of years here, the last 3 fiscal years, we've about allocated about $500,000 to just patching the roads. Those would just be to keep the roads functioning. Then, of course, we do annually some resurfacing and reconstruction. We've moved a lot away from our reconstructions to more of a resurfacing to try to maintain. The reconstructions are very expensive. When we do those, we look for grant opportunities or we get assistance through our federal funding for those type of projects. How do we set our priorities? Number one would be safety concerns. I'll talk about some of those later on in some high priority projects. We look at the pavement condition. We look at the traffic volume. Bicycle facilities, meaning that if it has a bike lane on the road or a transit route, that would be a tiebreaker over another road that didn't have those type of facilities. We also look at proximity to critical facilities. We also look at economies of scale efficiency. So that means that if we're going to plan to resurface, Road A, and we have another one that ties into it, much like Lincoln Springfield that we're working on, we would combine those two together to get economies of scale. Our high priority projects that we're working on, we're working with the Regional Plan Commission on the Kickapoo Rail Trail Extension Study. If you recall, last year there was a Weaver Park connectivity study which went from the end of the Kickapoo Trail at Main Street to Weaver Park. This study would basically pick up from the end and go all the way to Lincoln Avenue. The goal of this study would basically to determine the route. Obviously, we have an old railroad bed that we're interested in, but some of that route we may have proximity issues to the railroad, the active railroad that we have to work out. But this study would determine that location, try to at least estimate some of the obstacles, get public feedback on what the public would like to see. Maybe there would be trailheads that would come out of this. We, of course, have to cross Vine Street. That's an obstacle in itself. This study would be a multi-year study. We do have some generous support from Carle Hospital that we want to acknowledge for providing the local share. And then the Regional Plan Commission was able to secure a planning grant from the Illinois Department of Transportation to fund that. So there's no local or no City of Urbana monies in this other than the soft cost of city staff being involved. This project here, the Lincoln Avenue and Springfield Avenue resurfacing project, what you see on the top screen is a reconfiguration of the Lincoln and Main intersection there, where it's been identified as a dangerous intersection for bicyclists and pedestrians to move east and west, which is mainly from downtown Urbana over to the U of I campus and vice versa. This is a rendering which would show refuge islands, corner bump outs that would tighten the corner radiuses. We would provide basically an innovative design where the multi-use path would, or the bicyclists would move on to a multi-use path to cross the road. Right now we're in the final design phases. We did take this to the Historic Preservation Commission last week. They did have some concerns about the loss of the brick sidewalk on the northeast corner. I'm currently redesigning that to salvage as much of that brick sidewalk as we can, and by doing that I won't be bringing this to the City Council because we'll be able to, I think, meet the goals of the Historic Preservation Commission. At least that's my goal in the rework here. This project will completely resurface Lincoln Avenue from Green up to University, and then Springfield 1 block west at Gregory and 2 blocks east. We also have a refuge island at Stoughton and also at Clark, which is up near the rail development, excuse me. Some of our resurfacing projects, these are all very pressing type projects. Vine and Washington in the upper left corner there, that street is showing severe signs of what they call decracking. It has a high sense of urgency that we need to get that street covered, in essence sealed up, so that we do not lose that street. So that's a high priority project for us to get done this year. On the right there is Fairlawn Drive rehabilitation, which is east of the middle school. You can see the distress in the pavement there. The goal there would be to rehabilitate that pavement and restore it to an excellent condition. The bottom left corner is Ray Street, particularly at the Race and Oregon intersection there. There are some handicap or ADA curb ramp issues there at that corner. We have a deteriorated pavement. We have a lot of brick sidewalks throughout there that we're going to restore. They're in fairly poor condition. We have actually sections of brick that don't even exist. They've just been filled in with granite, red granite. So we want to restore those and get those back to an acceptable condition. We have a lot of students that walk up and down this street to get to the middle school and even the high school. Then we have the IDOT University Avenue project. This project's fairly extensive. Right now I'm understanding it's been moved to the August letting. So they're trying to work through their clearance issues for this project. Be happy to report that IDOT has agreed to lower the speed limit on this project from 35 to 30 miles an hour. We will be doing that, or they will be doing that in conjunction with the project. If the project is able to go on the August letting, I would anticipate not too much get done this year, and then it would be all of 2020 and probably all of 2021 too to get this project rebuilt. And then we have the MCOR Project 5. This would be the last of 5 distinct projects with the MCOR project, or MCOR in totality, the Tiger Grant project. This project would be on Green Street from Lincoln over to Race. This whole road would be completely reconstructed. We will be looking at removing parking on this street. That will be coming to the Traffic Commission for consideration this week, and then we'll be bringing it to you folks because we're re-envisioning this corridor as a connection to downtown Urbana. The consultant right now is currently in the design phase. The tentative schedule is for the water main work, which Illinois American is taking some lead or liberties, since we're going to rebuild the road to rebuild the water main, which dates back to the early 1900s. And that work would start here later this year and then continue through winter, and then in the spring of 2020 all the way through the remaining part of the year we would rebuild this road in phases. There will be some difficulties during construction, meaning that there are sections of road that we have to close in entirety, and we'll have to work out access issues for folks. But that's an exciting project that's coming our way. And then lastly, we have what's called a Phase 1 studies. The Department of Transportation has shifted some of their philosophies from what used to be funding of these studies to saying that they would prefer that a lot of these clearance type studies are done ahead of time when we go to apply for grants. So we've identified two primary study locations that are critical. The Lincoln Avenue location would be from south of Pennsylvania up through Nevada, so it would be running along the edge of the University of Illinois there. We have two intersections there, Lincoln in Ohio, Lincoln in Iowa, that are unsignalized, that are considered unsafe intersections. They actually make the top 5% list within the IDOT District 5 list. We think that this project could be eligible for highway safety funds, or maybe we will be able to put in, say, curb bump outs, maybe some medians. We'll also be investigating the sidewalk that's on the west side of the road that's fairly tight to the road, to see if we could work in conjunction with the university to maybe move that sidewalk off of the road. If you recall, several years ago there was a student that was killed and another one struck there. We've also had at these other intersections I was telling you about some pedestrians that have been struck. So this Phase 1 study would basically be the planning portion of that, and then that would allow us to apply for grants. Florida Avenue is another critical project that we would do a Phase 1 study. That would run from west of Lincoln down to east of Vine. One critical intersection in that corridor is Race in Florida. That intersection is also on the top 5% as a dangerous intersection, believe it or not. So what that would mean that we'd be investigating with outside consultants on solutions there to make that intersection safer. We're also looking at a multi-use path on the south side of the road that would run from Race in front of the U of I President's House and go down to Lincoln Avenue. This will likely result in the pavement to be completely reconstructed between Race and Lincoln, and we're hoping that east of Race we could salvage most of the pavement there. I'll turn it over to Vince.
So as I discussed in the assessment presentation, we're requesting $243,000 be budgeted this year to complete Phase 2, the space and programming needs, as well as Phase 3, the facilities master plan effort. I can say that when we're looking at a projected $8 million of deferred maintenance need over the next 10 years, and also looking at a $36 million estimated current replacement value, while this number right here may look large, it's a very small percentage of the total overall cost and the planning efforts that we're putting in place. And if the Phase 2 and Phase 3 one, as well as the facilities condition assessment, I think we're in good hands, and I think this is a very sound investment. Also included is $250,000 for parking meter mechanism replacements. We currently have 1,400 single-space coin-operated meters in the field and in service now. These meter mechanisms were purchased and installed 20 years ago. Currently, the mechanisms themselves as well as the hardware that we use to do our programming, our rate changes, and all of our back office, as of this year, are no longer supported by the manufacturer. So losing those capabilities is mission critical for us. We seriously need to make an investment in this replacement effort. Fortunately, with the implementation of Mobile Meter, which is our pay-by-phone parking app, currently that app accounts for 70% of all of our meter revenue was paid through the app as opposed to coins through the meter. So this $250,000 budget reflects as it stands now, a 25% reduction from that 1,400 number of mechanisms in the field in lieu for mobile meter only signage. And currently, I'm working with the finance department. We're doing analysis that we may be able to even increase that number up to as much as 50% based upon the success of the mobile app, and it's afforded us a lot more opportunities to remove those from the field. It increases our, or I should say, it lessens our operational costs with collecting and maintaining those as opposed to a single space sign. So we'll be looking in terms of what our opportunities are to reduce that number even further. We recently completed the first phase of a standalone conditional assessment for the downtown parking deck. That work is complete, and that consisted of a lot of structural work with some full-depth concrete repair on the second floor, as well as pillars below, some drainage issues, resealing the joints, as well as a complete new coating layer surface on the second floor of that deck. In consulting with the engineering firm who helped us with this, we've decided that the next phase of work is not necessarily critical and can be postponed in lieu of what we're recommending is a $50,000 investment in safety and security upgrades. And this, we'll be doing some research for increased LED lighting and perhaps even the possibilities of cameras and call stations. We'll be putting together a scope of work. I think with the potential redevelopment of the hotel downtown, this parking structure will be integral to the parking supply, and making sure that we keep it safe and inviting for the public needs to be our top priority. Also, in line with that, we have 1,700 public-owned parking spaces downtown. We are looking at a $300,000 investment for improvements to those lots. Those improvements will be based on the methodology of converting our fair condition lots to good lots and keeping our good lots good for the purposes of stretching that $300,000 as far as we can. And those repair efforts will be based upon an assessment that Craig and his staff will be performing to help us prioritize where to make those investments.
And now I think we're ready for all the questions.
Charisse?
Okay, my first few questions go to Mr. Gustafson. Sorry.
It's fine.
I'm gonna get it. Okay. One of the you talked about Fire Station 3, which happens to be in my ward, and you said that you would almost recommend, because it's in such bad condition, I guess, almost recommend that it not be in that area. What area would you think you could put it in?
The point that I was trying to make is we need to make that's exactly the type of work that we need to include, the type of questions in the space and the programming needs. Prior to making that substantial investment in the facility, when we do the space and programming needs and the facilities master planning, that'll be comprised of many focus groups that look at many different topics. So we'll have the opportunity to sit down with the fire department and their staff and sit down with the community to determine, okay, before we make this investment, is it proper to locate it here, or with the redevelopment of that site with the water company going away and the availability, do we maybe just move and build a new location in the vacant lot directly to the north? of it between the gas station and the existing facility. Perhaps we move it there, or with the expansion of North Lincoln, maybe it moves farther north. But those are the types of real depth evaluations that we need to make as part of the study before we make the massive investment that's needed for that particular facility.
Okay, so my question is, what's wrong with the location of where it is now? I mean, if you're talking about rebuilding, then why not knock down that building and rebuild it on that lot?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that it's in the wrong location. I'm just saying
Okay.
that will be part of the assessment. We need
Okay.
to make that determination that is where it should be, and that's the best in terms of response time and perhaps other development of other fire stations.
Can I just add one thing, which is, since we have 2 fire stations that are in need of major investment, I think what we need is a response time analysis for all of our fire facilities citywide to make sure we're getting the kind of coverage that is optimal.
Well, there are 3 fire buildings, right? Fire station buildings.
There's actually
right?
4. There's one on campus.
One here, okay. There's one
One-
off on Philo Road.
Correct.
One on Lincoln Avenue,
Campus.
And
and one on campus.
the campus is a U of I facility.
Right.
We just staff that facility.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is if you, if it, either one of those, especially Philo Road or the one on Lincoln, if either one of those are relocated or however, whatever, that could be a burden on this fire station to try to get to, or depending on where you want to relocate, or if you even want to have one in their
That's why it has to be looked at as a system, because
Yeah.
just what you're identifying, which is you don't want to create an undue burden on one station by moving another, so you have to look at it as a whole.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, how you would go about with that. The other thing, somebody said, and I think it was, where's Mr. Ho? Mr. Ho was talking about using the use of debt financing. I don't know how money works, to be honest. I don't know how the whole finance thing goes. I do know that a lot of times we use debt as money or as leverage on some level. Could you please explain that to me, what that means? The use of debt financing so that to bring the financial thing in the VERF, so that doesn't.
Yes, so
Yeah.
what we would do is we would
Elizabeth.
yeah, Elizabeth Matthew.
Okay, yeah, and I am, I'm a second grader, I don't know.
So whenever we talk about debt financing, for us, that means we're issuing a bond.
Okay,
So we would do that through a competitive process to achieve the lowest interest rate. Generally, we might do that, say, for 10 years and amounts up to, $10 million, just depending on what we're doing.
okay, so that's for the replacement of vehicles?
Yeah, so our current policy prior to amendment says that really debt is only considered for infrastructure and facility improvements, I believe. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
So what we're doing is, part of the change in the financial policies is we're broadening that a little bit to say that it's appropriate for capital equipment as well. So I think it's generally accepted that that's appropriate. What you don't want to do is you don't want to issue debt where you're going to be paying for the debt for longer than the life of the thing
Right.
that you're purchasing with
You
the
don't
debt.
want to still be paying for the truck after the truck's broken down and you need a new one. Yeah.
Right, and so that's the reason why we said 10 years, because most of our equipment, trucks, vehicles, we keep for 10 years or more.
Okay. All right, okay, thank you. That was a very good explanation. And the other thing is the meters, and we use an app to pay the meter, right?
Correct.
So I use quarters still. So, sorry, that works for me. So if a person doesn't have app, phone, device, whatever, will there be something there so that they can stick a dime, a nickel, or a quarter?
Our replacement of the meters with the signage will be strategic, so that we will remain the coin-only option. So like a certain area or section of a block would be replaced with the signage, while other areas would still have within that vicinity the opportunity to park at a coin-only operated space. So
Okay.
we're looking at a balance, really, between reducing our capital investment in light of the 70% or so of the folks that use the app, but while still we have to maintain that coin operated, because I know there are a lot of folks who don't prefer not to use that and still pay by coin.
Yeah, I know with me, when I go to this other place, city that's close by, they have the pay when you park thing. I'm always confused. Am I supposed to pay now, or do I pay later, or do I put my little debit card in here? And, it can be confusing, and I'm sure for some people it's probably a lot more convenient, just like I'm sure that for some people an app and on their device and whatever would be a lot more convenient. But I'm set in my ways, and there are a lot of people who drive who are set in their ways. So I don't know how one would go about. That's what I'm saying. I just want to know that what if a person doesn't have an app or the phone or whatever they need to make that work?
In our initial studies and look, like I said, it'll be kind of a block by block reduction. So we will still keep the opportunity for coin operated meters in all the areas where they exist. There will just be fewer spaces in lieu of the mobile meter only signage.
Okay.
I can say that at our parking deck downtown, we replaced our ticket booth, the staffed operation there, with the meters and the mobile meter only signage, and it's been highly successful.
Okay.
Actually, we've cut our operating costs significantly with the reductions in staff, as well as being able to capture revenue from all the hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., where before we could only capture the revenue as when we physically had someone staffing the booth. So that gives me confidence that while we still offer the coin meters, we can do a good mix of both options for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Dennis?
Yeah, I want to ask, and I can't remember your first name, Mr. Guthrie.
Vince.
Vince, that's right.
It's easier to say.
Yeah. When you were reviewing the priorities for replacement of city buildings, citywide, and you were talking about some of the aluminum barn buildings which are out and being used by Public Works. You said the Arbor Division storage building, and then the pump house, and a couple of other things. How are you going to balance what you consider to be, well, let me ask, are these buildings deteriorating? I mean, they look like they're made out of aluminum barn siding kind of materials, and usually those things last a long time. So what is it that's deteriorating in those buildings?
Primarily, let's see, if we talk about the storage facilities on the roofs, when we look at the paint shed, and then we look at the storage shed, those roofs are both in dire need of replacement. If you look at the smaller landfill pump shed out there that I mentioned, while if you look at the numbers for that facility, they look very expensive for a 10 by 13. However, the mechanical systems inside that facility, the electrical as well as the pumps for the monitoring there, it's like a muriatic acid component of that.
Yeah, I think I get that.
And it really has corroded to the point that it's a very expensive explosion-proof system in there, so that's costly to replace. So when we look at all these kind of standalone buildings in the Arbor Division, which is a huge steel shed built in the late 60s. It's had absolutely no updates to it whatsoever, from the employee break room to the lack of male and female locker room accommodations, to office with terrible wood, rotten paneling. It's just really a terrible work environment from an architectural standpoint
So,
as well.
so are you imagining then like just bulldozing it and looking for a new building?
There definitely exists a possibility of a larger, newer, improved sort of storage facility that we could assess all the needs of the varying department and maybe solve that with one giant, new, improved Morton-style building. But until we look at all the departmental needs as a whole, we need to make sure that that's the best investment as opposed to just repairing these small standalone facilities.
So, and how would you evaluate doing something which is basically shed-oriented versus, say, if you were going to try to improve the working conditions in the Public Works office, which is more of a true building with a lot of more substantial materials?
Well, the scope of work, the facilities condition assessment was primarily myself and Troy Richam and Vincent Powell, my building staff, just because of the nature of the study. When we roll into the space needs and the facilities master planning, this is going to be a much, much more collaborative effort with all the departments. We currently have, I believe, 16 dedicated focus groups written into the study, so we can look at all the different varying, different operational needs, from storage needs to operational needs, to locations of fire stations. I mean, all of these decisions play a key role in the sequence and the order of events and how we plan for these and setting those priorities.
Is that part going to be the one that's managed by Canon Design Study Group?
Yes, absolutely. They will manage it, and I will serve as kind of the facilitator.
So your presentation today is kind of basically an in-staff evaluation. It was like a primary.
No.
preliminary
Canon,
evaluation?
all the data and information that's provided in that presentation was from Canon Design.
Okay, so they came in and they provided all those things.
I provided them just the facilities and scope as well as all the known building data. They were able to populate that information into their standard data templates, and then they came on site for 3.5 full days with myself and my staff, where we did observed field conditions of all these components. They took that information back to their offices and compiled it into the reports that I'll share with you.
Okay,
and then through a collaborative effort, through myself and my staff's knowledge, we found the corrections, and we were able to tweak and adjust, the known differences between what we knew and what they observed.
So we have a situation where it looks like almost every public building or city-owned building needs considerable amount of work on it. They rate from poor to critical.
That is correct, yes.
And so it's going to be millions and billions of dollars to try to solve this issue over a period of. What's the time frame you think you're going to be able to solve this financially?
Well, the bulk of the priority needs identified fall within the priority 3 time frame. So that's a 3 to 5 year where the components reach their end of life. So when I look in terms of a planning effort, we couldn't really time out any better in terms of getting the facilities, space needs, and the master planning done between now and this time next year. All of those 3 to 5 years will start trending towards the priority 1 critical state. So,
I understand that. So probably then will some of the financial, the funds to actually start implementing corrections come from probably short-term loans?
Well, that's going to be a question I'm going to have to work out with.
One of the things we're trying to give you a holistic picture of is, for as challenging as our facilities needs are and how behind we are, that's just one asset class. Then we have streets, we have sidewalks, we have storm sewers, we have sanitary sewers. We have all of these things that have massive amounts of deferred maintenance, and we have a limited ability to leverage, our tax dollars to borrow money. So not only is it prioritizing among those different asset classes, it's prioritizing across those asset classes to figure out, okay, this precious money that we're going to be able to hopefully raise through borrowing, what's the best way to start spending that? And it's all going to be in relatively unglamorous types of investments, but really necessary. So it's a little bit difficult at this point until we start talking about what is our capacity to borrow money, which I think we'll have a better sense of that next year. What's a time frame for solving any of this?
Right. It sounds like a gigantic problem to be solving with very little resources at current
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, so, okay, just checking on that and seeing what the reality level is. I mean, gentlemen, you've all said that everything needs to be fixed, and I'm aware that our resources can't even probably do a tenth of it, so when things go critical, I mean, I guess I'm kind of curious about how critical. Super critical, or just we're talking critical because that's been the tag that's been placed by Canon Design.
Well, let me give you just a tiny bit more context. And part of this is we're not just speaking to the council, we're speaking to the citizens of Urbana too, because I'm not sure they fully understand how underinvested we are in these items. But last year there was a very difficult decision that was made to close the Civic Center. So that was something that wasn't, to use Vince's term, mission critical.
Mm-hmm.
But it was going to be a big investment if we were going to keep it operating.
Yes.
So we need to take a good hard look at, do we need all those facilities? Do we need all those separate facilities? And, just take a look at what's the next thing. Is it a sewer failure? Is it a sidewalk problem that is
Critical.
exposing us to great risk?
Right.
Is it a street that's about to fall apart, or is it a building that we need to address? That's why we have to prioritize across all these items too.
It's a big project, and I look forward to the results and perhaps solutions.
Well, and this would lead to the idea that if you ever get an opportunity to advocate for an infrastructure bill at the federal level, capital bill at the state level, don't miss that opportunity, because no city can do this alone. We need help from the federal government, which is our tax dollars, as well as the state capital bill, and there's capital money in the budget that was just passed by the Illinois General Assembly. But this is the kind of infrastructure, when the President and Congress talk about it at the federal level, this is what they need to be focusing on.
Here's a great opportunity for an angel in the community to want to have a street named after him.
Or that too.
Or building.
Questions? Eric?
So the VERF thing caught my attention, and I'll put this in context because it's been well over 50 years since I bought a car any other way except paying cash. And that saved me a tremendous amount of money because I haven't paid interest on car payments. So it seems to me, as I understood the document, it seemed to me that you were proposing, what was being proposed was to issue bonds to pay for vehicles in order to keep the general fund above a certain level. Now, whether or not that makes sense seems to me would only make sense if the interest on your bond payments were less than the return on the general fund. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense at all. So can you give me an idea of, what those relative costs are, the interest on the bonds and the return on the general fund dollars?
Elizabeth is coming.
So just to be clear, when you looked at those charts, you weren't looking at general fund balance. You were looking at the fund balance in the VERF fund.
Well,
But-
sure, but
but
they're
it's-
related to each other.
They're related, for sure. So I guess as an example, I would say right now, if we were to issue, a $10 million 10-year bond, we could probably come in around 2%, and we're earning probably about 2.5% on our money right now.
So it's almost a wash.
Close, but
Yes,
I
yes.
can't say that that's going to be the situation, 5 years from
But you
now or
don't-
10 years from now.
Okay, I would suggest that when it comes time to actually do the deed and bring it to us, I guess,
Right.
that you compare those two numbers, because how it comes out is would tell you whether or not, tell us whether or not it makes sense to issue the bonds or just to pay cash.
Well, so two things. So of course, we couldn't issue debt without council approval, so there would be a discussion with the city council before that ever happened. It's, it's some years into the future at this point. But one of the issues is, do we actually have the cash? So if
Sure.
we don't have the cash, we can't pay cash, and therefore we have to borrow the money.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, sure. But typically you would borrow for something like a big infrastructure project where it isn't even a question. You don't have the cash. You've got to borrow. But for vehicles, I think the case isn't quite so clear.
Okay. Well, we'll be continuing to reevaluate as we go forward.
Let me take this opportunity, Elizabeth, because I had some questions about the VERF fund as well. So either one, I don't know who would be best to answer it. Sure. So basically, from what I can gather, we are currently taking an additional $119,000 from the general fund to offset the previous underfunding of the VERF. So what this does is it says we're no longer going to do that. Right, so we're going to stop doing that. And instead, in your fiscal year 30, 33, and 35, this is my question, at each point, is the proposal to take a $3 million bond, or is it $3 million over all three of those fiscal years?
So I think it would be a little premature to call that a proposal. So we're looking at a plan, and
Okay.
it will certainly change as we move forward. So I think what Don has assumed is 3 separate bond issues in there, but that may not be how it actually happens when we get to that point.
So 3 separate bond issues at $3 million each for each bond is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, I believe that's what's in there.
Because I just did the back of the envelope estimation. If we paid $119,000 over 20 years, which is this, it's $2.38 million. So I'm just trying to figure out where we come up with $10 million in bonds as, I don't know if it's a proposal or what you want to call it, but an assumption versus funding the fund with $119,000 each year. So the numbers just don't, they're very different. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure
so
out.
I think there's another piece in there, which is we had a goal to, what our assumption was when we ran those numbers was that we didn't want the fund balance to go below 10% of the value of all the assets in the fund. And so we're not just trying to bring it to zero, we're trying to stay considerably above that.
Sure. I guess last year I thought that's what we were doing as well with moving the money from general, right? That's the proposal or the plan at that time was to take additional funds from the general to offset, to make sure that that VERF didn't go below.
That's been the plan for a number of years.
Right.
But the reality was, in this budget environment, taking that money from the general fund every year was becoming a drain on the general fund.
All right. We're also, if we go from 90 to 70%, but you also said that the 70% would not decrease the amount of money that was being pulled from the operating budgets because of the cost of the assets would continually increase, generally speaking? That's what I thought I read. Is that correct?
Yes, true. So we'd be going from 90% to 70% funding. Part of what's built in there is that when we reevaluated the VERF, we had some significant cost increases for specific items. Like I believe Don mentioned the radios.
Yes, $450,000.
$450,000 increase over what had been tracked in the VERF for all of these years, so that we had not been planning for.
Is part of that due to the addition of the cameras? No?
No.
Okay. I didn't know why we increased it by $500,000. I didn't know what was the cost of that.
No, the radios are separate from the cameras. I think it was a mix of things. So for many years, we were just relying on the departments to provide that information. I think the cost of the radios individually has increased substantially. And when we started comparing So for example, the numbers that we were getting from different departments weren't matching up, and so we just kind of went through and we reconciled all that and came up with what we think now is a realistic price.
All right, and then can you tell me what the difference is in changing the language on the financial policy here? You have, that's something we haven't talked about. So it says the general fund, we've erased approximately and said at least a reserve level of no less than 15% is appropriate. So what is the impact of those changes?
So from a practical perspective, there's not really any impact. We're still going to budget at least 15%. But I think as we've talked about this internally, and I know that we've discussed this with council also from time to time, we think 15% is sort of, it's what's achievable for right now, but it's probably not where we really need to be. And realistically, we think that we probably should be, in the long term, looking at a reserve level about 25% of recurring expenditures. So I think we just want to emphasize 15% is not necessarily the end goal, but that's the minimum where we want to be. I'll give you an example of why that kind of thing is important. So we had this little F1 tornado recently that tore across the south side of Urbana. And really, in the scale of things that we might deal with, it's a tremendous effort for Public Works. But the cost of just that event, when we add all the additional overtime hours, the need to dispose of all the landscape waste, the need to use some contracted services, is probably close to $100,000. So if we had a major event, a larger tornado that affected a bigger part of the city, we could be talking, millions of dollars potentially. And so that's where we'd be looking, is to our general fund balance.
Yeah, I guess that was my concern. So absolutely, there's the reason we have the 15 million, sorry, not the 15 million, the 15% is to take care of issues in which maybe an entire bridge collapsed and we have to go and fix it, and it's going to be millions of dollars and so forth. And if we have this language that we have at least 15% of recurring expenditures in the general operating fund, and yet we had to basically dig into the rainy day fund to pay for these expenses, what is the impact there? Does that make sense?
I think there's some specific language, I don't have it in front of me at the moment, that says that's the number we want to budget, is at least 15%. But if we had to dip in, I believe the policies say it's my responsibility then to provide a plan to council to say how we're going to get back up to that level over some period of time.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that we would never touch it, because when we need it, we're going to do that.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So my next questions are for Public Works. Is that okay, or should I? Yeah? Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the city facility study and master plan. I'm a little confused, and I think Bill is watching, so I want to thank Bill for pointing it out last time. I pulled up the budget from last year. Last year, we had budgeted $75,000 for the facility assessment, space needs assessment, and facility planning process is what we called it. So $75,000 initial investment, with the total cost of the study expected to be $150,000 to $175,000, and that would be paid this year. So now we have the final phases of the city facility study and master plan will be completed in fiscal year 20 for a cost of $243,000. Is that in addition to the $75,000 that we've already paid? And have we paid the $75,000?
The $75,000 is for the first phase. That covers the facilities condition assessment that I presented tonight. That $150,000 was just a rough budgetary figure we used prior to engaging in the RFP process, which was a qualification-based selection for which we did not use price as a selector. We selected Keenan Design based upon their experience and qualifications. So the $75,000 was identified was budgeted for this specific phase, and through our scoping negotiations for phase 2 and 3, we've determined the price of $253,000 is what we're asking for next fiscal year.
So, okay, so basically, I'm just trying to figure out, we're over budget $243,000, so $250,000. that we're over budget on this project. Is that correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say we're over budget. It's that our initial budgetary figures were lower than anticipated.
I guess my point is this. I think that Carol is absolutely right that we have to make hard decisions. You know, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of assets that we have that have to be replaced. There's a lot of things that we haven't had an opportunity to fund to the level that I think the city would like to fund. We have retirements that we have to be investing in. We have infrastructure that we have to be investing in. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm against spending $243,000. My concern is this. We continually get large bills, and we have to make assessments. So we're given this very big budget, and we're saying this is the amount of money that we would like to spend on this. When a contract, it seems to me, has already been perhaps signed, or is it in the process of being signed for this facility study?
The contract for Phase 1 has been signed for the $75,000.
Right, but we already budgeted that for Phase...
No, we have not executed an agreement for Phase 2 and Phase 3. We cannot execute that agreement until a purchase order is in place, which is constituted by the budget. So when the budget's approved, July 1, we've got the scope of work and the costing assembled and ready to go. That's when we'll put the purchase order through. That will give us the authorization to execute the contract with Canaan Design for Phase 2 and Phase 3.
Okay, all right. It's a lot of money.
Sure.
It's not, you know, we hear about all these sewers that are collapsing and streets and everything, and it's a lot of money.
If I could frame that, I mean, I realize that that's a huge number, but if you take that in context of $8 million of deferred maintenance in $36 million current replacement, just direct cost of our facilities as a percentage of what we possibly are looking at investing here, and engaged by the success with the first phase, and I can guarantee you, I mean, the quality work, the cost of making ill-informed decisions would far exceed $250,000 if we make the wrong choice for strategic, the planning, the efforts on the sequencing of these events, or the size of the facility, or even the possibility of not having a qualified firm to give us a space needs recommendation where we invest $10 million in a facility only to find out that it doesn't meet the space needs that are required just to move in day one. So those are the kind of mistakes we're trying to avoid by making this investment on the front end of the project with a highly qualified firm.
Can I just interject something? Brad, remind me, the Stormwater Master Plan, 225, 250?
It was 250.
250. Pavement condition assessment, how much?
It's less than 200,000.
Okay, so those are things that don't involve human beings, and one of the reasons why the facilities master plan is more complicated, even though the assets themselves aren't on the same order of magnitude of the storm sewer system and the streets. And this is what drew us to Canaan, is because it is human-centric. This whole space needs and planning is about, well, how do people interact with each other? How do people interact with the public? How will they interact with each other and the public 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, given evolving technologies, so that we are making long-term investments, and we want to make sure we're making the right ones. So everybody who's been involved in the process feels very strongly that this is a sound investment.
So just going down the amount, so we have $250,000 for the parking meters? Correct? And
Yes.
$300,000 for surface parking?
Correct.
And how much do we normally spend on maintenance of surface parking?
To date, we've spent zero.
Today we
So,
spent $0.
$0. I've been here 14 years and we've done $0. So what the 300,000, we started budgeting 50, and then we rolled that over. We added another 50, and it's taken, in essence, 5 to 6 years to sort of accrue.
So this is money that's been accruing. You've been
yeah.
saving up for this time frame.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, good. So the parking meters. As Cherie said, there is I think at the train station, there's one where you can go and get a little piece of paper and put it in your windshield. All right, they're all over Europe, they're all over the big cities nowadays. So I'm curious if we investigated using those systems.
Those are the multi-space. From from a convenience factor, I can say that there's a problematic, especially on campus, when you're going to a specific building or to a specific area, to have to park your vehicle and then walk back 3 or 4 blocks to a single pay station, and then walk back the additional 3 or 4 blocks just to get to the right direction you were starting with is very problematic from a customer standpoint. Also taking in consideration that one kiosk handles maybe anywhere from 15 to 30 spaces. So if you have any functionality issues with that one piece of equipment, then you potentially lose all the revenue of those spaces until set time that the repairs can be made. And I can say that, in my discussions in the conferences that I've been to, that's a realistic expectation of those devices. With the single coin, with the coin-operated mechanism replacement that we're providing here, we'll have the opportunity for the single space at where you're at but also have the opportunity to pay with your phone in adjacent spaces.
So do we also have, just like we do with the vehicles, do we have any kind of replacement cycle for?
No. As I said, our current 1,400 meters were purchased 20 years ago, and that's how long we maintain them out of our operational budget. Just kind of one-off replacements, and our inventory of replacement mechanism on the shelf is dwindling fast. Also, I should point out that at 20 years, their tolerance for cold weather has greatly declined. The past 2 winters, there were more than one instance of severe cold temperatures where we've lost anywhere from 50 to 100 meters, just flip dead, decide not to work. And that requires us to go back out and manually reset and recalibrate each individual space one at a time. Now, with the end-of-life obsolescence of our hardware, there are handheld units that do that reprogramming. When these units do decide to fail on us, which eventually they will, because I think they're all at 10 years old now, we will lose that ability to reprogram in these spaces. So when they're out, our only option is to replace the mechanism. So that's kind of the critical nature of the purchase that we're pushing right now.
And I don't doubt that, if you can't update, the amounts have got to be replaced. I'm just trying to think a little bit outside the box, perhaps not even outside the box.
I appreciate that.
But trying to figure out if there's an opportunity here for us to do things a little bit differently. I think that the prime one would be the parking garage, because as you said, people don't want to be walking several blocks to go find this machine to
Sure.
put a piece of paper in. But the parking garage is one which everybody is consolidated into that area.
Correct. I'm not saying that there are certain areas where, like a surface lot, say maybe perhaps just hypothetically the library lot or the Civic Center, other downtown lots, where they're all centrally located and the destinations are primarily one location, where that we couldn't consider that as an option. But I can tell you that those units are costly in and of themselves, probably equivalent to the cost just to replace the single mechanisms in the lots themselves. And like I said, from a maintenance standpoint, they are problematic to where if one meter we have an issue, we can respond to that quickly and efficiently. But if we lose an entire kiosk, that the whole lot's out of service. I'd also like to point out that with the efficiencies and the improvements in technology, the coin-operated single space meters, even the ones that I've included in the budget here, even the most basic ones include Wi-Fi capability. So that $250,000 includes setting up specific nodes in areas to collect real-time data from the spaces. So instead of waiting for parking enforcement or our staff to go out and field and identify outages or failed batteries or coin jams, based on the information we have and the new technology, we would come in the morning and print out a daily report. So here's a battery, here's a joint. We can respond to those proactively instead of reactively and get those meters back into service, as well as real-time audit data and analysis to give us peak flows and times of when people are parking, when they're coming. And it also saves us the time from we spend quarterly having to go individually audit each meter out in the field as part of our internal controls. So we're also gaining great efficiencies with this proposed budget, as well as replacing outdated infrastructure.
You know, the county courthouse lot uses a machine to take payment for parking spaces while people are at the court, and you could probably ask them how successful that technology is.
We've had frequent communications with Dana Brenner, the facilities manager over there, with our parking enforcement staff, because we do enforce that lot, and I can tell you it is problematic for them.
Eric?
So it seems to me that coin-operated parking meters is a dying technology that isn't dead yet.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And one of the, Walking Dead, it's a zombie technology. It's a zombie technology. And when people use coins, that increases our costs for dealing with it.
Correct.
So I would suggest, but on the other hand, some people, it's all they're able to use.
Right.
So, but I would suggest motivating people to move over to Wi-Fi systems, mobile meter, etc., by actually having a double parking schedule. Charge people more if they use coins than if they use mobile meter or Wi-Fi. Hopefully that would encourage people to shift over to the more efficient way of doing business.
Well, there's actually a built-in incentive because as someone who used to get parking tickets and who now never gets parking tickets by using mobile meter, is you reduce your, if you pay attention, you reduce your chances of getting parking tickets by a great deal because you get an automatic reminder to re-up if you're spending over your time. So it's there's actually a built-in advantage to using mobile meter.
There's a built-in incentive, but let's increase it. Let's charge people who use coins 75 cents an hour, people who use mobile meter 50 cents an hour.
It costs more money to use the mobile meter.
There is
a little bit. It does.
It does.
It does.
But when you get a $10 or $15 ticket, it's the overall. It's
there is a
net
per use convenience fee, obviously, and that covers our credit card transaction fees for each processing, as well as that supports the vendor passport parking. That 10 cents of that goes to their company for managing this. But
well, let's tack something on to the coin people to sort of equalize that, and give them a visible incentive.
We are definitely all for incentivizing the use, but like the mayor said, it's a great incentive when you use the app and you're downtown and you're having dinner and it's running a little late and you don't have to race back to your vehicle to plug the meter. Your phone will give you an automatic notification and you can advance time straight from your phone. So that's a definite winner.
So let's do a big public education program, and we'll know we have succeeded when Charisse is doing it all that way.
I don't mind walking a block. But I'm also thinking what you're saying too is the meters that you're talking about take coins and they do Wi-Fi.
Right.
So for us quarter people, us parking dead people.
They're also $250,000.
Yeah, but the thing is that we may not ever have to buy another meter.
Oh, you old fogies.
So I'm looking at the long term. I understand what you're saying, by all means, the cost of everything. But the thing, I have to look at it like this, fighting with my mom doing things like this. The cost of not doing it.
Right. Okay.
It far exceeds to me, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, we've exhausted the subject of meters. We've got a few more minutes to take any other questions.
Exhausted me.
Okay, and I'm sure staff will be happy to answer questions if you have them later. And what we'll do is anytime if a council member has a question, if an individual council member has a question, we try to email all council members with the answer so that you all have the same information. So I'm sure as you study this this information, you'll come up with more.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just noticed, does this include the presentation on the Champaign-Urbana solid waste disposal system? Was that?
No, I think that's separate later on.
Okay, all right.
That's coming up.
That's fine. I had
But
a
I do
question on
have
that
one more question.
Is it not about meters?
No.
Okay.
No, it's basically about your presentation, your what's the jigger, your PowerPoint. Could I get a paper copy of that?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
like that.
And for the
Thank you very
public,
much.
and for everyone's knowledge, we're going to be running, we could probably run all these PowerPoints on the video out in the lobby. That screen in the lobby has turned into a great educational tool, and I see people just standing there watching the video. So we'll be running those out in the lobby as well. But yes, we can get you electronic versions and paper copies. These are chock full of information, and it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any unfinished business. Reports of standing committees. Jared Miller.
Last week, the Committee of the Whole met and sent forward 2 resolutions to the full council with recommendations for approval, the first of which was Resolution Number 2019-05-013R, a resolution approving a loan agreement with the Urbana Free Library. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Eric. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Second resolution is Resolution Number 2019-05-014R, a resolution in support of establishing the Downtown Urbana Historic District. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
I'll second that.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of special committees. Okay, reports of officers. Seeing none. New business. We have Resolution 2019-06-015R, which is a resolution authorizing protest requests for hearing intervention in real property tax exemption proceeding before the Illinois Department of Revenue. This is the case of OSF Healthcare System doing business as OSF Heart of Mary Medical, docket number 18-010-00054. Is there a motion?
I move approval of resolution number 2019-06-015R.
I'll
And I
second.
Mayor, we need a motion to waive the resolution on resolutions for this and the next item.
I'll make a motion to waive the resolution on resolutions
For both items?
for both items.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Mary Alice moves to waive the resolution, okay, and...
Waive the resolution of
on
resolutions.
Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. So you're going to have to guide us through this one, Mr. Clerk.
Now we can just proceed. See how much time it'll take us.
No, now you can just do it. You've waived the resolution on resolutions, so now you
Now
can
we just move
consider it.
forward.
So now we can second the
Somebody can motion.
2019-06, that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So second.
So it was
It
moved
was
by
moved.
Eric, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Perfect. Councilmembers Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is Resolution 2019-06-016R. Resolution approving the Champaign-Urbana Solid Waste Disposal System annual budget, fiscal year 1920. And we'll have a report from Public Works.
All right.
Good evening. What I'm bringing before you this evening is the budget resolution for fiscal year 1920 for the cuss words, which is the Champaign-Urbana Solid Waste Disposal System. It's an interesting acronym. But what this is it's our abandoned or I shouldn't say abandoned, I should say closed landfill facility out where the LRC is located. At the time it was accepting waste back in the 60s and 70s, it was kind of a joint venture between the City of Urbana, City of Champaign, and the U of I. And all three contribute to its post-closure operational costs. We do some groundwater monitoring and surface water monitoring out at the site, as well as some maintenance activities where we get settled areas. We'll bring in dirt and fill those up so we don't get water standing and seeping into the landfill. We also collect some of the leachate and treat it so it doesn't seep out of the sides of the landfill. I mean, basically, we're trying to be good stewards and make sure no contamination travels off-site. So what we're proposing for fiscal year 19-20, we're looking at a total expenses of $44,710. Because we've accumulated a large cash balance, we're looking at not asking any of the member agencies to contribute anything so we can kind of spend down our cash balance. They had decided a number of years ago that $50,000 was probably a target level of cash on hand to meet any anticipated unexpected expenses that weren't budgeted. I'll also point out that in the future, Scott Tess has been working on trying to get solar landfill panels out there, and that any lease fees that we get or compensation we get from the solar company would be used to offset costs for the Cussword site and would reduce member agencies' contributions. So with that, I'll open up and see if there's any questions.
Technical questions, Mary Alice.
So I was trying to understand this. You said that it was decided that the cities and the University of Illinois would not be contributing this year to the fund because there's a fund balance, large fund balance. In the memo, you say that the budget for administrative costs reflects a reimbursement to the City of Urbana for 10% of the Urbana co-director's salary and benefits related to minor office costs. So my question A is, administratively, there's a manager who is budgeted over here, correct? And it looks to me to be a portion of somebody's time.
It's my time.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
So a portion of your time is allocated to working on this.
That is correct.
And is that portion 10%? Is that?
Yes, and the reason for the increase in cost was previously that hadn't been adjusted since about 2007. So this year I made it a point of adjusting that to match, what my current salary cost was, and moving forward, we'll make that adjustment every year so that reflects. That's why it jumped from, $10,487, up to $13,210. You can see most of it is in that manager's salary. So the previous practice within the Cusswords group was that they didn't make annual adjustments to that administrative cost. You can see it was the same year after year, and we decided that that wasn't particularly fair, and we should make it reflect what the actual costs are each year.
So does the City of Champaign and the University of Illinois contribute to the $13,000?
Well, that's an expense that their contributions pay for, yes.
Okay. All right. So basically, it's the fund that pays 10% of a salary for the manager, who happens to be you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move for approval of resolution number 2019-06-016R, resolution approving the Champaign-Urbana Solid Waste Disposal System annual budget fiscal year 2019 to 2020.
I'll second that then.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Next up is ordinance 2019-06-032, which is an ordinance approving a major variance. The Hubbard Garage Apartment, 812 South Ray Street, ZBA case 2019 MAJ01. Thank you for your endurance.
Thank you, everybody. And we do actually have the petitioner here who's appreciated sitting through this meeting today. So you can ask your questions, of course. So I'm going to make this as short as brief as possible, but hopefully as thorough, and you can feel free to ask me questions at the end. The applicant is Kimberly Hubbard. She is living at 812 South Race Street. She's the owner. She basically has her current garage. She'd like to tear it down and replace it and improve it to make it a principal structure, basically having a garage apartment on top. That, in order to save 2 trees on the lot and to maintain the distance from the intersection with her driveway or access drive in the zoning ordinance, we would like to present her case for a major variance of the zoning ordinance to have a principal structure in 5 feet of the rear lot line. Really fast, I'm just going to point you.
Clerk, do we need to extend the time of our
At 10:30.
at 10:30? Okay.
Okay, so the single-family home is located right here at Race and Washington. You can see that there's apartments to the west. There's single-family homes, duplexes that are primarily in the area. If you scroll down, you can see that this is an R3 property where single and 2-family dwellings are permitted by right. And the future land use map of this area is residential with institutional at the bottom where it's got Urbana High School. Exhibit D is the site plan provided by the applicant. I'm going to try to show this. Right here you can see that there is a spruce and a tulip tree located very close to the proposed garageway, honestly very close to the existing garage. And that's the new one would cut in by 2 more feet or 3 more feet to be 5 feet in order to still maintain the appropriate space for establishing a dwelling use and car parking, but also save the spruce tree right here. And then this exhibit right here was drawn by staff. It's really here to show that there is not a lot of buildable space on the lot due to the fact that this is a corner lot. And we'll get a little bit into this with the major variance criteria. But we wanted to show that the front lot line here, the house is right up against the front lot line. We have a lot of extra space in the Race Street side. 5 feet is located right here, and then the 5 feet would actually be cutting through the middle. The existing garage is non-conforming. And we have the applications. So really fast, I wanted to go through R3. What we're really looking here is you can see that the existing subject property meets the FAR and the OSR for the existing and proposed buildings in the front and side yards. The rear yard will be decreased by 5. Currently it's at 8, which it legally requires 10. And a quick note, garages are generally speaking allowed up to 18 inches of the property line, though this is a principal structure that houses an accessory use, which is vehicle storage. So it's treated a little bit differently in case you were wondering. I'm going to go through the criteria for a major variance. Oh, okay, well, great. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that there is, special circumstances that are outlined in the staff, like the tree. And that is a very brief presentation.
Technical questions for Lily. Sharice?
Okay, so I just want to understand, the structure is going to go from being a regular garage to being an apartment garage?
The existing garage would be torn down and replaced with a garage apartment, so the apartment would be above. That part is actually already been approved with a conditional use permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals. What we're really considering right now is being able to build it 5 feet closer to the property line in order to save 2 trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary Alice?
Just remind me, I believe I read it, that there was a public hearing, and none of the neighbors actually came or submitted any letters or anything. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis?
And having read the conversation at the Zoning Board of Appeals, there was a discussion about the possibility of a future owner or another, or this owner eventually subdividing the lot into two separate buildings as two separate dwellings, if that were possible. And I think there was a decision that codicil was added to the approval that this would not be possible. Am I getting this correct?
Super close. The condition was added by staff prior to the meeting, but it was after the memo had already been sent out to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So it was an additional condition that there was a lot of discussion at the Zoning Board of Appeals about that additional condition, and that additional condition was trying to meet the concerns that we've seen in other parts of the city, and it's really kind of more frequent in the county. Someone could buy property or exchange money or anything for property, and it go down to the county recorder's office and get it recorded. And then there's a whole host of problems that happens from there. We actually had an expert on Zoning Board of Appeals, Joanne Chester, who had seen this happen various times. So that was very interesting. In order to kind of prevent that, we just wanted to record something. It is already currently illegal to subdivide a lot like that, but it would show up a little bit easier, a little bit faster in a title search, which is one of those things that is generally required for a bank if they're going to loan money. And it's a lot of times if someone is going to buy property, they would want to do a title search before they bought it. And so we were hoping to make it easier for that situation to be diverted. Anytime, say, I'm gone, you're gone, we're all gone, it's 100 years down the road, and future city staffers and politicians and the county's office won't have to bang their head up against a brick wall for that. So that condition was approved, but there was one nay. There was 5 yays.
Eric?
So just a couple of blocks from where I live in the historic district, there's a grand old house, and then there's a second structure on the property, which was the carriage house. And now it is, the carriages were on the ground floor, and the servants lived above.
Yeah.
And now, so you are replicating this terrific, classic architectural feature, and I love it.
Thank you. AARP actually has a really good presentation on that. The historical significance of accessory dwelling units is what kind of zoning and planning officials call it.
Charisse?
Will the garage apartment have a separate address than the address that Ms. Hubbard?
That's a really good question. I'd have to ask Public Works, particularly Dan Rothermel, the staff surveyor, that question. But I currently don't think it would be, especially seeing as the mother. Here comes Lori.
It'd be called like the back house or something like that, or what?
Is that working?
All right, can you hear me? So we would, Lily's right, we would talk to Dan Rothermel, but typically that unit is going to require, correct me if I'm wrong, separate electric, separate sanitary sewer, so there would be a lot of separate things. It's probably going to be an A or a B on the address would be my guess, because we don't want to encourage those illegal subdivisions by giving them a separate number, perhaps. So we want to make sure that it's clear to future owners that it is one lot, not separate, not able to be separated.
So it is 2 on a lot?
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori.
Jared?
Not a question, but I was wondering if you'd entertain a motion, Madam Chair.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to move ordinance number 2019-06-032, an ordinance approving a major variance, the Hubbard Garage Apartment, 812 South Ray Street, ZBA case number 2019-MAJ-01, be approved.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Charisse. Any further discussion? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item on the agenda are mayoral appointments to boards and commissions. For the Property Maintenance Code Board of Appeals, most of these terms are going to be ending June 30th, 2022. Dan Harmon as chair. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Leonardo Kovis, Audrey Ishii, Susan Jones. Civilian Police Review Board, Mikhail Libansky and Grace Mitchell. Human Relations Commission, Lolita Dumas, Daniel Larson. Plant Commission, Nancy Wadrago. Property Maintenance Code Board of Appeals, Gary Burgett. Zoning Board of Appeals, Joanne Chester.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointments by the mayor.
Second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. And with that, it's 4 hours and 10 minutes later, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.